The Latin American Revolution, the betrayal of a continent. Look at the map, a whole continent forged in fire. From the Rio Grande to Tierra del Fuego, an entire colonial empire crumbled in less than 2 decades. We call this the Latin American Revolution, celebrating the heroes, Bolívar, San Martin, Hidalgo. But what if I told you this revolution was born not from a sincere desire for universal liberty, but from elite greed? What if the men who shouted the loudest for freedom were the same men who betrayed that freedom the moment they won it? This is the story of the hypocrisy, the forgotten victims, and the shattered dream of an entire continent. This is the revolution that promised everything, but ultimately delivered power to the very people who deserved it least. This is the fat historian's deep dive into the Latin American betrayal. To understand the explosion, you must first understand the pressure cooker that was the Spanish caste system. At the very top, you had the Peninsulares, pure-blooded Spaniards born in Spain. They held every high office, every key military post. Below them were the Creoles, full-blooded Spaniards, but born in the Americas. And this is where the seething resentment began. The Creoles were wealthy landowners, educated, and held immense economic power, but they were treated as second-class citizens by the Peninsulares. They were constantly frustrated by strict colonial restrictions that stifled their trade and denied them political representation in the viceroyalties. This was their first, most powerful motive: social vengeance. Crucially, below them were the vast, unseen masses, the mestizos, mixed race, and the indigenous populations, who wanted far more than political freedom. They wanted land and equality. The Creoles promised them these things, knowing full well they would never deliver. The fuses were lit by foreign chaos. The language of liberty came from the Enlightenment and the success of the American and French revolutions. But the real spark, the geopolitical trigger, came in 1808. When Napoleon invaded Spain and replaced the rightful king with his brother Joseph, he inadvertently created a massive power vacuum. The colonies suddenly had no legitimate crown to swear allegiance to. Local juntas, governing councils, formed, quickly turning towards independence. However, there was a second, terrifying catalyst that drove the Creoles to action: the Haitian Revolution. This was the world's only successful slave revolt, which led to the creation of the first free black republic. To the terrified Creole elite, Haiti proved one thing: if they didn't grab power first, the enslaved and the poor might rise up and slaughter them. Independence became a desperate race to maintain the existing racial and economic hierarchy. The revolution in the north, Mexico, was dramatically different. It wasn't led by a general, but by a priest, Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla. In 1810, his Grito de Dolores, Cry of Dolores, was not a measured call for Creole governance. It was a furious, violent demand for land reform and the end of colonialism. Hidalgo's army was made up of furious indigenous people and mestizo peasants, a brutal, undisciplined force of nearly 80,000. And this terrified the Creoles more than the Spanish army ever could. The Creole elites quickly realized their true enemy was not Spain, but the racial lower classes who demanded actual change. After Hidalgo and his successor, José María Morelos, were captured and executed, the conservative Creoles, led by Agustín de Iturbide, changed sides. They declared independence in 1821, only to ensure that the poor would not inherit the country. It was an elite counter-revolution designed to preserve the status quo. In the South, the revolutions were led by two giants, Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín. Bolívar, the Liberator, was a true visionary who dreamed of uniting all of South America into a single powerful state, Gran Colombia. His military genius was unparalleled, but his fight was complicated by the llaneros, mixed-race cowboys who initially fought fiercely against him. San Martin, meanwhile, executed one of the most audacious military feats in history: the crossing of the Andes with his army to liberate Chile and secure the independence of Argentina. The true paradox lay in their final meeting in Guayaquil in 1822. San Martin, seeing the division, quietly stepped aside, leaving Bolívar to complete the final battles, including the decisive Battle of Ayacucho in 1824, which secured South American independence. But even then, Bolívar knew his dream was already dying. The flags changed, the anthems rang, and the Spanish were gone. But was the revolution truly successful? For the vast majority of the population, the indigenous and mestizo peoples who did the actual fighting, the answer was a tragic no. The Creole elites simply replaced the Peninsulares at the top of the social pyramid. The promises of land reform were forgotten. Debt peonage and quasi-slavery continued in many nations. And the moment Spain was defeated, new shadows emerged. Britain and the United States swiftly asserted their economic and political influence. The Monroe Doctrine, America's declaration that it would oppose European interference, was framed as protection, but was actually a geopolitical signal. Latin America was now open for American commercial exploitation. The continent was politically free, but economically and socially, the chains had simply been polished. The Latin American Revolution was a monumental achievement in political history, but a profound failure in social justice. The movement that began with the cries of the dispossessed ended by cementing the power of the privileged. Simón Bolívar, the man who sacrificed everything, saw this truth clearly before his death. In his final despairing assessment, he wrote, "America is ungovernable. Those who served the revolution have plowed the sea." A single heartbreaking sentence that summarizes the tragedy of a revolution hijacked by greed. What do you think? Was the failure of Gran Colombia inevitable? Or was the revolution doomed the moment the Creoles gained control? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more uncompromising historical analysis, make sure you subscribe to The Fat Historian.